Should I create a YouTube channel or should I start a podcast? That is the question on your mind. In this video, I'm going to give you 14 different reasons why you can consider any of them, and I'm going to help you decide which of them is best for you.
Hello and welcome to Audacity to Lead TV. I am Dyer Samuel, and this is where we give you the courage and the necessary insights you need to lead with more influence. Now, if this is your first time here, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss any of the conversations we are having here. In case you're wondering, why are you doing this video here like this? Well, we are currently restructuring our studio, but I needed to get this out to you. So I'm doing this right in the middle of our current studio that we are refurbishing. So everywhere is looking very rowdy and rough. But anyway, let's jump into the conversation of today. Now, what I want to do here is to walk you through YouTube versus podcast. Should I start a YouTube channel or should I start a podcast? Which of them should I consider? Now, in order to answer this question, I'm going to walk you through 14 different things that you need to consider. And my hope is that by the end of this particular video, you will be able to make a decision that is fueled by knowledge, proper insight. So let's jump into that right away. Now, what I've done is I've kind of divided this screen into three. So you're going to be seeing one side will be focused on key idea, while underneath the icons of YouTube and the icons of podcast, you are going to be seeing me list things out that will help you to consider the pros and cons of starting a YouTube channel or considering creating a podcast. Well, the first thing to consider is current trend. And when we say current trend, what is currently trending online right now, even offline? You can see that currently podcast is taking up a lot of main space, a lot of conversational space, both online and offline. And in fact, podcast is currently going mainstream in the sense that people within media are beginning to consider podcasts. In fact, a couple of media houses now have podcasts. So when we talk about current trends, podcast is currently on the rise. And what you can consider before you actually make a decision is, it will be a good time to jump onto a trend that is rising or to come late to the party. Well, while there's no time that is late to any of them, whether to start a YouTube channel or to start a podcast, there is no time that is late. This current time is the perfect time for you to start either of them. But then when we consider the current trend, you find that podcast is currently on the rise. Second thing to consider is the ease of creation, or what I call cost of setup. When you want to set up a YouTube channel, what does it cost to set up a podcast? In comparison of the two of them, when you put them side by side, you find that it's easier to start a podcast than it is to start a YouTube channel. If you are going to start a YouTube channel, you need to consider camera, you need to consider video editing, you need to consider, and the interesting thing is that practically almost everything that has to do with podcast, even videos, majority of them are free. In fact, when it comes to podcasts, you can actually check in the description below for a link to how to start a podcast with your phone. I'm going to put a link to a free course that you can take right now that will guide you through how to start a podcast with your phone. And even if you want to start a YouTube channel, if you want to create video, edit and upload video, you can check down in the description below as well for a video on that we have actually produced on how to create video, edit and upload it right on your phone. So that cannot be excuse, but if you consider the ease of creation, you'll find that it's easier to actually create a podcast than it is to create a video. In a video, you will need to show your face. In podcast, you don't need to show your face. You can actually be anywhere, anytime, and you will create the kind of show that you want to create. Moving forward, when we consider searchability, that is the probability of your video or your podcast showing up on Google, you will actually find that one of them is more prioritized in search engines. For example, if you go on Google right now and search on a subject, you'll find that you will find more videos on Google search results than you will ever find podcasts on Google search results. Even if you find podcasts in the search result, what you will find will most probably be a blog post that contains the podcasts and has been properly optimized for search engine. So that is what you will most likely find. Typically, videos is more prioritized in search engine than audios. So if you're considering any of them, you will go with video for that. And that interestingly seems to be like that's the first yes for video. So moving on, let's talk about engagement. I want to talk about engagement. Which of these two formats, which of these two media content or format tends to engage people a whole lot more? Well, video engages people a lot more than podcasts will ever do. A podcast has its own advantage, but when it comes to engagement, and by engagement I mean you can engage people auditorily, you can engage people visually, you can even engage people by showing something on the screen for them to maybe do or try and all that. But sometimes when you think about creating podcasts, sometimes it's not easy to do that. So when you are thinking of engagement, a video is best used to engage people. So let's say you are a fitness expert, or maybe you are a food expert, or maybe you are a graphic designer. The best way to show what you do will be through what people can actually see, isn't it? But if your content does not necessarily need to be something that you can show on screen, you can basically speak it without necessarily showing it on screen. And moving forward to analytics. Analytics is how you can measure what is working and what's not working, the data, the back-end data that powers. When you consider the ability to have analytics, well, YouTube already has that inbuilt. While for podcasts, Apple is even still currently trying to give us the analytics. Even podcast platforms, for example, Spotify is still incorporating podcasts into their. For podcasts, some platforms will give you the ability to see the behind the scenes of what's going on with your show, but a lot of podcasts would not give you all of that. They will most likely give you the places where people are downloading, the kind of apps they are using to download, or where they're listening to your show and all that. But when it comes to getting a granular form of data, YouTube already has that. I don't know as of now of what platform does that, but I know Spotify does that, and Anchor is trying to do that, but iTunes is yet to provide any of such data to podcasts as Casa. So when you consider analytics, you will most likely go with video. Next point is consumption. And when I say consumption, which of them is easier to consume? Well, you bet it. Audios are far easier to consume. Podcasts are far easier to consume. In fact, that's the reason why people can actually tune in to a radio station and still be driving. But if you're driving, you may not be able to completely enjoy a video the way you would naturally want to enjoy a video by looking at the screen. So there's the element of screen time involved with videos that is not available with audio podcasts. So when you are considering whether to start a YouTube channel or to start a podcast, my best recommendation is, if you want people to actually consume your content, well, depending on where you want them to consume your content, a podcast may be a best path for you to take. Next is reach. When we talk about how reachability of your content, the format that best supports reachability is a video. And when I say reachability, with a video, it's easier for you to reach a lot more persons than if you post an audio, a podcast. So for example, a lot of platforms currently support video, but not many platforms support audio. So if you want to share a video, it's easier to share a video, but it's not easier to share audios on platforms like Instagram, Facebook, even YouTube. You may not be able to share your audio. In order to share audio, in order to reach people using that format, you would have to add some element of MP4, try to turn the audio into the MP3 file into an MP4 so that you can actually share that. And once you turn it to an MP4, it means that it now becomes a video or something related to that. So if you want to reach more people easily, a video will be the best path for you to take. When it comes to competitiveness, which is the advantage you have over others in a market, that is, if every other person is creating blog posts, what can you do to separate yourself from the rest of the pack? In fact, right about now, let me get on my screen here and actually explain something that I did back in 2014 when I was getting started. Now, when I was getting started online back in 2014, one of the things that I did was to actually start a podcast, because I found that every other person was basically creating blog posts, writing posts on social media and all that. So in order to create this competitiveness, in order to separate myself from the rest of the pack, I began with a podcast, and that podcast gave me a higher leverage compared to those who were just writing posts or those who were even doing videos at that point, because with a podcast it's easier to travel far and wide. So if I'm going to answer the question of competitiveness, a podcast does that for you. A podcast kind of elevates your game if you're playing in a crowded marketplace. So of course, when you talk about competitiveness, there are millions, if not billions, of YouTube channels, but there are yet to be 1 million active podcasts on iTunes or even in any platform. So you find that there are less people who are playing the podcast game compared to those who are playing the YouTube channel game. That's that for that. When it comes to virality, well, we can't even compete this. Video has that virality built into it, because video naturally engages people at a very, very deep level, in the sense that it's engaging them visually, it's engaging them auditorily. Video has that sense of virality built into it. In fact, when it comes to sharing, it's easier for people to quickly share your video than it is for them to quickly share your audio. So video has that when it comes to virality. Now, when it comes to building relationships and deepening relationship with your marketplace, deepening relationship with your audience, well, a video allows you to do that, because with a video you can show your face like I am doing it right now. You can actually show your face, you can gesticulate, you can do a lot of things that you can do that only video allows you to do that. Do you get that? So when it comes to building deeper relationships, building relationships with people, it's easier for you to actually build relationship with people via video than it is via audio. Now, audio has its own advantage when it comes to this particular subject, but I'm going to talk about that as we go on. So let's continue with that. Now, when it comes to ownership of the content, if you are going to go with a YouTube channel or you want to go with a podcast, who owns the content? Well, any content you put on YouTube does not completely belong to you, in the sense that YouTube still dictates what goes on that platform. But when it comes to podcasts, you own your content and you own the platform. In fact, the platforms will most likely be begging you to come and put your podcast on their platforms. So when it comes to ownership, podcast gives you that sense of ownership. You own 100% everything you create as your podcast. But for video, the video you put on YouTube, even when you check the copyright statement of YouTube, you find that there is this YouTube license, there's this YouTube copyright statement that you can put under your video, and there's also Creative Commons. So you either put YouTube license or Creative Commons. Creative Commons means that somebody can reuse your video. YouTube license means that somebody will have to credit you in order for them to use your video. So you see that even at that, it still belongs to what YouTube allows you to do. But with a podcast, you completely have ownership of your podcast. So moving on from there, when we talk about audience retention, that is the ability to hold the attention of an audience from the beginning to the end. And when we talk about audience retention basically means that if people start a video or they start an audio, if they start consuming your content, what is the probability that they will get to the end of it? For example, as at now in this video, you may have probably dropped off, and that is fine. And if you're actually still listening to me, please hit the like button. Let me know that you are still listening to me. In fact, if you are still listening to me up to this point of audience retention, leave a comment down below and say, I'm still with you. But when we talk about audience retention, in comparison of YouTube and podcast has it, in that naturally when somebody wants to listen to a podcast, they kind of off the top of their head kind of do a calculation. Okay, I can dedicate the next 30 minutes to listening to this show, I can dedicate the next 15 minutes to listen to this podcast. But when people are watching a video, sometimes they feel like you are wasting their time, and so when they feel like you are wasting their time, they kind of fast forward or kind of skip to where they are looking for. So when it comes to audience retention, podcast has that. Moving on to ease of understanding, or which of them is easier to understand? Well, there are things that I can explain to you if I were to be teaching you this via audio alone, and I'm not showing something on the screen for you to see. It might kind of not be easy for you to understand, but because you are looking at it right now, even though this particular podcast, even though this particular content, even though what you are listening to or watching right now is going to be available as podcast and also going to be available as video, but you can see that if you watch the video, it's easier for you to understand what is going on, because I'm engaging you at another level than just auditory engagement. So when it comes to ease of understanding, easy to understand, video has that. So if that's what you're looking for, if you want people to be able to easily understand what you want to share with them, video will be your best bet. Now, if you're thinking of mobility, now mobility is the sense of your content being able to travel from place to place, from place to place, from place to place. While it's easier for people to quickly share videos online, podcasts seem to be able to travel further than videos. In fact, if you have actually asked somebody to send you an audio before, that's because there's this sense of mobility with audio that you can actually be listening to it and still be mobile, which is not present with video. With a video, if you are going to be mobile, you will actually have to maybe deny the screen in order to focus on your transit or your journey. But for audio, you don't have to disconnect from what you are doing in order to continue to enjoy the audio. So when we talk about mobility, podcast has that built into it. When you are considering starting a podcast or you want to run a YouTube channel, any of them that you want to consider, you need to know these things, and that's why I'm sharing this with you. So if you actually look through everything that I've shared with you right now, you will find that of the 14 things that I have listed, videos score 7 and podcasts score 7. You know the reason why? That's because the decision is now up to you. What are you looking for? What do you truly want to achieve? Now, just to give you a little guide, someone once said that video is the new JPEG, and that means that video is now what people now use to communicate. In fact, I once saw a stat by, I think, Oracle or so, that by 2022, 80% of online communications is going to be happening via video. So you may consider video. Second thing that you will also consider is this: do you prefer radio or do you prefer TV? Depending on your choice, if you prefer to listen to radio, then naturally you will gravitate towards creating a podcast. Now, for me, that was my own stance then. Now, when I began to create content and began to see that sometimes I need to explain things visually, I began to ruminate over creating a channel. And that was what led to me creating my own podcast, my own YouTube channel, and then later on created Audacity TV, which is where you're currently watching this from. Now, the next thing to consider as well is that people have preferences. Some prefer to learn auditorily, some prefer to learn visually. Now, your best bet will be to actually incorporate the two of them. By that, what I mean is when you are creating the content, create the content for video, then extract the audio so that people who want to listen auditorily can actually enjoy it as a podcast, while people who want to engage you visually will actually get to have that enjoyment of video. So if you do your content that way, that is, you are recording the video with the mind that you are recording a let me say it this way, you are recording a podcast with the mind that you are capturing it as a video. That way you are creating a more powerful, a more interesting content, because you will be engaging people visually as well be engaging them auditorily. So based on all of these that I've listed to you, are you going to be starting a YouTube channel or you are going to be creating a podcast? Whichever that you decide, please leave me a comment down below and let me know your choice. Now, if there are things that you would like me to clarify of the things that I've mentioned here, please leave a comment down below as well, and I'll be glad to answer your question. Once again, I am Dyer Samuel, and I want to say thank you very much for watching. If this is your first time, please go ahead and subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you can begin to lead your life and your business in the direction that matters to you. I'll see you next time.